In FusionFall, there are 4 guides for a player to choose: Ben, Dexter, Double D, and Mojo Jojo. A player could have all 4 guides in a single game, having to only pay some taros to switch between the 4. Each guide brings his own storyline to winning the war with Fuse. Ben is collecting plumber gear, Dexter is searching for missing heroes, Double D is seeking out hidden candy, and Mojo Jojo is raising an army. Of the 4 storylines, Double D stands out as being out of place. Although it is perfectly in line with his character's goal, like from the show, it seems out of place when fighting a giant space goo. However, just like the hidden treasure Double D is searching for, there's a hidden importance to his mission line to uncover. Since all of us are FusionFall people, I'll give a brief overview of the storyline. The search for hidden treasure begins with the mission Map Quest. When the player finds a treasure map in the junior high, they locate the first stash of candy down in the trailer park. However, this candy is not normal. Talking to Sticky Beard reveals that this is candy known as Crazy Brain Candy. In Sticky Beard's words, it's an ancient recipe that scrambles the brains of anyone who eats it. Fuse wants this candy to damage the Earth side, and managed to steal another of Sticky Beard's map. Once it is retrieved, the player finds the next stash in the graveyard. The player gets another map and finds the next stash in the sand castle. Blue has the idea to send it to Dexter, who uncovers that there's a magical quality to the candy. This makes a good deal of sense since Sticky Beard did mention it was ancient and the ability to scramble someone's brain would require magic. The next stop is the spaceport, but it turns out the candy is missing. Ben sends the player to nowhere, but Courage reveals that it is actually at the Really Twisted Forest. Unfortunately for the player, it's still not there. Fuse's forces took it to the upper catacombs. Beating up the meanies has them dropping the candy, but it's not the stash the player was searching for. A dinosaur bone indicates that the player must go to the Darklands, where it's believed the candy is taken. While in the Darklands, Courage reveals candy pirates are searching for the candy as well. This was lightly referenced in the forest with a bandana found in the chest, but since the item becomes the reward, it's possible that it was just left over when Sticky Beard was hiding the treasure in the first place. Jack informs the player that the candy was taken by Fuse's monsters into his lair, and planting a dark tree seed reveals that it is hidden deep in the lair in its own chamber. Jack has a plan, getting the player to retrieve a great shellworm's shell and an eyebore sap in order to destroy the candy. When the player pours the sap into the chamber, Double D celebrates this victory, claiming Fuse can no longer use the candy against the Earth Kids. It is never stated if the destroyed candy includes the candy hidden by Double D or just the candy the player was searching for since spaced out. As you can see, Double D's storyline shares a similar structure with Ben's in that the two are keeping items out of Fuse's hands: Ben Plumber Tech and Double D Magical Candy. This storyline is fascinating, especially because it is presented as a simple treasure hunt story, not an actual "we must stop this crazy magic item" getting in Fuse's hands. While this would be the good place to stop, upon writing the script I really couldn't just leave it here. The storyline was unique in its use of an ancient magic object, but there are some missed opportunities. The storyline was often interrupted by non-related missions that Billy and Blue gave out to clearly pad and give players something to do in that particular level area. It's not horrible, but it always felt off that Blue and Billy, 2 of the biggest idiots in the game, were who Double D sent us to. We spent more time running errands for them than actually finding the candy. It would have been better to have other characters take their place, like Henrietta for those who have seen my secondary guides video. I'm also disappointed that Valley Ghouls drops that the candy pirates are trying to take the candy back, but we never get the confrontation of this sort. We know there was the bandana in one of the chests, but aside from that and Courage saying so, we don't actually get a representative fighting for it, which seems like such a throwaway line. You remove it and literally nothing changes. This would have been such a fun storyline to have. After Sticky Beard sends the player off to search for the hidden treasures, he could have sent someone to shadow the player and successfully steal all the candy the player had found, only to wind up having Fuse steal it, explaining why all the brain candy would be destroyed. Sticky Beard said he was the one who hid the candy, and as an expert on candy, would have had the best knowledge on it and should have been more involved. There's also the question on where the candy comes from. It's an ancient recipe, so who wrote this recipe up? Outside of Sticky Beer calling it ancient and Dexter addressing it as magical, there's no real dive into its origin. However, for those of you who have been noticing a pattern with my uploads, you can probably guess who I think is related to it. Let me know where you think the recipe came from and who did it. Thank you for stopping by to hear about information you probably already know. The lore within the game is actually very interesting when you take the time to look it over, and this was one of the lore threads that piqued my interest. I may look at the other guides and their storylines, or move on to story arcs. Once again, thank you for stopping by, and I hope to see you next time.